Good evening, everyone, and thank you for watching. I'm Katie Moore. That tropical disturbance that we've been telling you about since last week is starting to gain some steam. Just this morning, the National Hurricane Center issued an advisory for a potential tropical cyclone, and although the worst of it is still ways out, the rain is already coming down in many spots out there, including here in the French Quarter, the North Shore, and over in Mississippi. So let's get over to Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin for a look at what's popping out there right now. Chris?
Yeah, this has just been that abundance of tropical moisture that was headed our way. We got into the rainfall yesterday, again today, starting to finally see a lot of the rainfall wind down. Much of southeast Louisiana drying out, with the exception of down toward the coast. Still have an ongoing flash flood warning across parts of the metro area, though the heaviest of the rainfall has now moved out of that area. It was mainly some ponding of water in a few low-lying areas and some poorly drained streets. North of the lake, finally get a bit more of a break, some light sprinkles around Franklinton, other parts of southern Mississippi, but otherwise also drying out. So the trend is for us to continue drying out. Then our focus is going to be on that surge of moisture down in the western Gulf. That is tropical, or potential tropical cyclone 1. The expectation is that it will briefly become a tropical storm, but that really doesn't matter to us because the rainfall is going to be well removed from the center. The center may stay over western Louisiana, but we will likely get into the bulk of the heavy rainfall. Weather Service is even mentioning the fact that some localized areas, 8 to 10 inches of rain, especially on the North Shore, and they're not completely ruling out an isolated 20 inches of rain. That's what some of our high-end computer models have been calling for. That would not be widespread, but that is not out of the realm of possibilities because this is such a deeply saturated air mass that is moving our way. And if these storms are able to tap into that, some of the rainfall could be very high in terms of those accumulation totals. Katie?
Chris, it's going to be falling on deeply saturated ground at this point. So what's the best case scenario here? I
would say I don't think we're going to avoid the rain. Best case scenario is that the center of the storm actually tracks a bit closer to us, which would shift this a little bit more to the east of us. As the ground is saturated. I would say some of the overall estimates of what the Weather Service is calling for right now is probably our best case scenario. Several inches, if we can get that spread out over as long a period of time as possible, would be ideal. But we know, as we saw today, some of these rain cells are very heavy, sometimes in excess of 3+ inches of rain in an hour. And so some areas could see significant totals.
All right, something to watch for sure. Thank you so much, Chris. Check out this video now sent to us from a viewer. You can see several streets and even some neighborhoods are flooded in parts of South Mississippi already. Several inches of rain have already fallen there, with even more, as Chris mentioned, on the way. Now, conditions appear to change mile by mile across South Mississippi, with some areas collecting water in low-lying areas and other water in other spots. Now, Sananda McCall joining us live from Lumberton, Mississippi, with a better look at conditions there. So, Sananda, how are things looking where you are?
Hey, Katie. Well, the drive from New Orleans to Mississippi really showed us what those conditions look like. They were pretty much scattered on the way here all afternoon. And even though it's starting to sprinkle right now, we're in Lumberton, Mississippi, by the way. It's starting to sprinkle right now, but it's certainly more favorable driving conditions compared to what we were experiencing on the way out here. We did hit pockets of rain on and off along I-10, with heavier bursts around 3 o'clock, slowing drivers down and, of course, creating stretches of brake lights. And as we moved onto I-12 and I-59, the rain just continued to come and go. And we did see that crews were checking drainage systems along the way. And then as we got closer to Hancock County earlier, we started receiving some of those flood alerts and saw reports of road impacts. Now, emergency management reported just afternoon today that Spears Road was impassable because of flooding. So we did go to check it out, and we did come across water on the roadway. Now, we even heard from a driver, they told us that conditions were even worse farther down the road, and that area does have limited cell service. So we are working to take a closer look at that. Now, as for the flood warning, that did expire this afternoon at 5 o'clock. However, officials are monitoring, of course, rain that is expected to be falling throughout the week, and they are encouraging drivers to slow down and don't drown. Sending it back to you, Katie, live from Lumberton, Mississippi.
All right, great update. Thank you so much, Sananda. High-level meetings are already underway as the state and the city of New Orleans prepare for that possible tropical system, and Paul Murphy is showing us the potential impacts.
Multiple rounds of heavy rain are expected in the New Orleans area between now and Friday. The National Hurricane Center has now upgraded a developing disturbance in the Gulf to a potential tropical cyclone, the step before a named storm.
They seem to be fairly convinced that it will move out in the northwestern Gulf long enough to become Arthur, and then it fairly quickly rolls into southwest Louisiana.
Tropical storm warnings are already posted along parts of the Texas and Louisiana coastlines. Louisiana state climatologist Jay Grimes says the system could bring windy conditions, potential flash flooding, and higher than normal tides. He expects southwest and central Louisiana to see the worst of it, including the possibility of double-digit rainfall totals. Forecasters expect the heaviest rain to arrive Wednesday night into Thursday, then slowly taper off as the system pushes east and northeast.
There is a low-end chance for some active storms to develop in the rain bands that may form around this tropical system. And in fact, the National Weather Service is acknowledging a very low-end threat for destructive thunderstorms, damaging winds, and even the possibility of a brief spin-up tornadoes.
In New Orleans, emergency managers warn the rainfall rates could overwhelm the city's drainage system and cause street flooding, depending on how the storm sets up and whether rain bands train over the area.
We're going to be leaning forward, so if things do deteriorate for the city, we'll be in a position that we can easily respond to any of those resource needs and requests.
New Orleans Emergency Management Director Derek Henson is asking residents to avoid traveling during the storm if they don't have to.
If you have to get out and travel, have a couple of ways to get to your destination. If you see flooded water on the roadway, don't try to drive through it.
The expected rainfall from this system could also push some area waterways over their banks, particularly in central Louisiana. Paul Murphy, WWL, Louisiana.
To help you get ready for all this, we do have the full list of sandbag pickup locations for you on our website. And that's where you can always watch the latest forecast and catch our live radar. WWL app features alerts for weather and breaking news, and you can download it on your phone or your TV for free. Speaking of the tropics, we're finally seeing a breakthrough tonight in a post-Hurricane Ida lawsuit against Entergy. Attorneys came to an agreement that could provide new information about how parts of the grid failed during the storm. Winston Reed reports from Civil District Court.
5 years after Hurricane Ida left thousands without power for weeks, Entergy's attorneys have agreed to shed some light on information surrounding its power grid before and after the storm. A class action lawsuit filed on behalf of Entergy customers shortly after the hurricane accuses the company of grossly inadequate maintenance and inspection of a system that would not sustain even a hurricane with wind gusts below 100 miles per hour. Wendy Williams, one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit, joined attorneys outside of Civil District Court ahead of Tuesday's hearing. Her family was one of many that was left in the dark.
It was very hard because at the time I had little grandbabies. There was ages, I think, 1 and 3.
The lawsuit against Entergy Corporation and its subsidiaries, Entergy New Orleans and Entergy Louisiana, lists fewer than 30 customers, but represents all of the 900,000 plus customers who lost power. It cites WWL Louisiana's reporting of the rusty transmission tower that collapsed in Avondale, and it alleges that the company lied to regulators about the resiliency of its system before all 8 transmission lines feeding the New Orleans area failed during Ida. After years of fighting to withhold information, Entergy's attorneys came to an agreement with plaintiffs' attorneys to share a sample size of data from its grid equipment, including feeder stations.
What failed, what worked, how was power restored. And so that data was information that the plaintiffs need to be able to establish their right to be in this case, specifically as members of a class.
Entergy's attorneys were originally seeking a protective order Tuesday that would keep information private, but they suddenly switched gears and agreed to share some data with the plaintiffs. I caught up with one of the company's attorneys, Rick Stanley, after the hearing.
What made you come to the agreement with the plaintiff today?
We thought it was the best way forward for both parties.
Why not release all of the data? Why is Entergy hiding?
We're not hiding anything. This is litigation, and we're proceeding according to the rules of litigation.
But you're only releasing some of the information rather than all of the information that the plaintiff was originally seeking.
And that's litigation.
If the data Entergy turns over is not enough to give a clear picture of the failures in Hurricane Ida, both sides will be back in court. I'm Winston Reed reporting, WWL, Louisiana.
So we did reach out to Entergy Louisiana and Entergy New Orleans for comment, and we're still waiting for a response from both companies.